Welcome to the Future of Work podcast. My name is Dr. Vic Benuyenah.
And I'm Dr. Mona Mustafa, and welcome to another episode on the Future of Work podcast. This session focuses on localization and nationalization. We look at how the private sector can attract and retain local talent. We also explore some of the key trends and challenges facing the world of work, including lack of motivation and why the world cannot quit quiet quitters. Joining us here in the studio is a specialist when it comes to attracting, connecting, retaining, and empowering local talent. He is the founder of TBH Advisory. Mr. Talib Hashim, we are absolutely delighted to welcome you here with us. And finally, we get to meet you.
Pleasure is mine, and finally we do get to meet. It's been quite an adventure to meet, to get here, since we connected, I think, several months ago, if not a year.
Yes, yeah.
But I'm a big believer that everything happens at the best of its time. So thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. So, Talib, we know your business is focusing on upskilling local talent. It's not just about recruitment, but also looks at the whole talent cycle, if you like, from recruitment to training to development to retaining this skill. So we want to first find out from you, what is TBH Advisory all about? And if you could please tell us about some of the work that you do in this consultancy firm.
Thank you very much. So upskilling also is just one piece of this puzzle that I call of having to drive sustainable and effective nationalization or localization. My focus has been in the UAE and the Gulf region. In the Gulf region, as you know, the term nationalization refers to this government-driven initiative to employ national talent across different sectors, and specifically in the private sector. Employment, recruitment, upskilling, these are just pieces of the puzzle. What we've been doing and where I've come from is I first started out with dabbling into the employment and recruitment. So we operated like a traditional recruitment agency, just focused on getting people on seats. That was our focus. But I realized within the first 2 years that there were other challenges that came up or arose. I had employers coming to me and asking me, right, we've hired these nationals, but we're finding it difficult to communicate with them. Our managers are finding it difficult to communicate with them, to bring the best out of them, to motivate them. We're finding it difficult to retain them. We're finding it difficult to keep them engaged and motivated, which is a key issue today in today's workplace, employee engagement and motivation. I had companies come to me and say, right, how can we upskill them so that they become future leaders in these specific roles or functions? So what I embarked on, and this is when I first started, was in 2006. Right. What I embarked on 2 years after we set up our company was this journey of understanding the different gaps that existed and continue to exist in what I call the national talent cycle. And these were gaps in different areas. And I realized recruitment alone and employment is just not sufficient enough to address a sustainable and effective nationalization process. So this would start from strategy, employer branding, all the way to the end of that cycle. And I think we can discuss some more about that. But for us as a company, we define ourselves when we define ourselves as a localization advisory that is focused on people and business. And TBH offers services and solutions in 3 key areas: talent, business, and human capital. And that's why the term TBH. And our mission is to be able to enable people and businesses to grow successful in the Middle East area, in the Middle East region. So that is what we've been doing since then.
And I heard from your previous podcast, Talib, that it also stands for "to be honest."
Yes,
which is a nice one as well.
Yes, I found that. I found that out later after I set up my company. People sometimes mistakenly think everything is designed and there's an ingenious person who designs everything. I say sometimes the best things in life are by accident. When I came up with when we first launched our company, when I issued the license, the truth of the matter was I couldn't come up with any name for a company. And I thought Talib bin Hashim made sense, TBH, right?
That's what I thought initially. I thought it's just your initials.
That's what I thought as well. And then what happened was we found ourselves working with companies, trying to help them on their talent challenges. So where they identify talent, how do they accelerate the upskilling of talent? So talent initiatives. We found ourselves working with companies on how we can help build their capacity and capabilities to operate successfully in the local market. And we found ourselves working with companies adopting best HR practices. And then I realized, it's not necessarily about me. It's about our clients and businesses and their ability to address these 3 key verticals, which I still preach and I talk are very important. If you're coming to set up here in the Middle East or you're operating, these are the 3 key areas you need to focus on besides the vision and the strategy. You have the best of talent and you have the best practices to keep them and grow them. Your business is aligned with local market realities and you have the capacity and capabilities to drive business here. And you have the best HR practices. Now, to be honest part was something that I found out from a young intern that we hired. And she said, Talib, you have a really cool name for a company. And I wondered, a cool name can't be more boring than talent, business, human capital. And she said, no, it actually stands for "to be honest." That's what I thought. And I said, wow, I never thought of it that way. So as a result, what we did was, is capitalize on that. We made honesty a key core value of our business. So everything, all the conversations we have with employees is really driven and based on honesty. Every solution we come up with is organic, honest solutions. And we launched the To Be Honest podcast.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Really? Okay. So let's have some honest conversation.
Absolutely. More than happy.
Great.
I welcome it.
Wonderful. The work that you're doing is absolutely great. Now, in our preparation for the podcast, you mentioned to Dr. Vic and I something that I found really interesting, and I'd like maybe us to discuss this. And you said, it was really nice, you said nationalization is a creative lab that includes everyone. And I thought that creative lab is very fascinating. Could you just shed some light on that?
My version of nationalization, if someone would ask me, how do you envision nationalization in its most effective and most optimum shape? It shouldn't be when you, and Dr. Vic would also know that the minute you say the word nationalization, international businesses and executives immediately start getting a little bit nervous because nationalization has historically a connotation of government taking over nationalizing businesses or organizations, So it is an intimidating term from the first time you hear it, right? But then when you dig deeper, nationalization from a government, the way it's defined by government, is this initiative focused on helping the employment of nationals to work in the private sector. So it's not inclusive by nature. It is really catered and addressed towards, it's by government looking at overseeing the success of this initiative and for nationals to work in the private sector. My argument is these nationals are not going to operate and work in a vacuum. They will work toe to toe, shoulder to shoulder with expatriates, right? They will work in private sector settings, right? So it only makes sense that it is inclusive and it is aligned with the needs of both parties, the nationals as well as the organization themselves. So for me, what I started, so the nature of nationalization is it is isolated. And today that is what you see, whether it's in the UAE, in Saudi Arabia, in Bahrain, you have nationalization managers in a nationalization department, completely separate from the rest of the organization. And the serious conversations is normally with human resource and HR, and nationalization is almost seen as a function to fulfill quotas or at best CSR, right? Or public relations, since we're speaking in the spirit of honesty, right? This is what it's seen. And a nationalization manager or an emiratization manager or monetization manager is seen as someone, we only resort to this person when we're behind our quotas or our visas are blocked or when we're looking to hire nationals. Now, I'm not generalizing, not all organizations look at it and perceive it this way, but a good significant percentage of organizations and employees look at it that way. So my definition is for nationalization to be successful, we developed a program, and at the heart of the program is a creative lab workshop. So that creative lab, in order for us, we are not looking at we don't go and tell our clients, this is how you should implement nationalization in your organization. Your organization could be in FMCG, could be in fintech, it could be in any sector. We don't tell them that. What we tell clients that we invite your internal stakeholders and the heads of business functions in a nationalization creative lab. And in that creative lab, that creative lab is a safe space that is inclusive. And the purpose of it is to identify and talk about challenges and identify solutions. And the goal is not about integration of nationals effectively, but the goal is how can this integration happen in a manner that is fulfilling to the nationals who are joining this organization and also fulfilling to the business. And this is where people don't focus on. They talk about nationalization and they don't talk about, what's in it for the business? How can nationalization fulfill a business strategic goal or strategic and commercial objectives in the country? That is not a conversation that is at. So in our creative lab, we have that type of conversations. Again, the whole goal is at the end of it, it's a step towards integrating nationals. It's a step towards the organization identifying key initiatives that they can roll out to make this happen.
That's great. I really love that creative lab. I'm going to ask you, Talib, a little bit about the role of AI in a minute and how that's shaping your business. How is that affecting the skills that are, the skills gap and all that? But before this, let me bring Vic into the conversation, please. From an academic perspective, obviously what Talib's advisory is about is all about talent, looking at not just the recruitment, it's just one piece. I think it's great that all of the cycle of talent management is looked after. So what is really upskilling in today's world? What do we really mean by upskilling in today's world of work?
Yeah. So recently there are just a lot of talk about two different concepts. One is upskilling, the other one is reskilling. Upskilling is to train existing talents with skills that will enable them to adjust or adapt to the new requirements of the workplace. Whereas reskilling is ensuring that training is provided to people who potentially might lose their jobs to be able to carry out different roles and tasks in new environments or in new roles. So when we talk about AI, which I think you'll be coming to shortly, assuming AI displaces talent, which is sort of capital taking over labor in the workplace, then there will be reskilling. Whereas if the employees continue to exist in the same organization or in the same industry, there will be the requirement to do upskilling. And this was also the case in the 1920s, many years ago in England, when coal mining was the main job for most males in UK. And then coal became not a very good product because of efficiency as well as environmental issues. The coal mines were shut down. Employment level fell from about 1.9 million people to today just about 300 people who work in, say, heritage and sort of cultural, train-related places. So at the time that this happened in England, it was impossible to immediately reskill the miners who lost their job. Structural unemployment took place. It was a very difficult moment in the UK at the time. So I do not envisage that the same sort of effect is going to happen these days, because we are not shutting down fossil fuel, for example. I think it would be far-fetched to say, let's get rid of fossil fuel and move on to electric completely. I think it might be a gradual process if ever it happens. So for that reason, I think what will be happening most of the time going forward will be upskilling in most industries. Lots of people talk about people are going to lose their job. I think the view is if you work like a robot, then robots will take over your job. But if you do not work as a robot, then you only need to upskill to continue to work. And jobs that are very repetitive, as we all know, if your job is very mechanical in nature, very robotic, very automatic in nature, then at some point you might be displaced. I do not think it's going to be a global phenomenon. I believe it's going to happen more in developed countries rather than developing countries, because developing countries do not have the scope and the infrastructure to implement some of the changes that are happening right now. It's a phenomenon that will happen a lot more in capitalist nations or emerging countries. UAE, of course, is far advanced in this domain. As you can see, the immigration sector is fully automated. If you apply for anything in the UAE, it's a matter of seconds. It gets downloaded onto your mobile phone. This is an advanced way of managing governance and also the population, which is a remarkable thing. But I do not believe that we're going to have a phenomenon where 30% of the population in any country is going to be sat at home where machines have taken over. So I'll re-emphasize one more time. Most of what will be happening, in my view, would be upskilling. And I'm one of those who have to upskill to be able to teach.
We all need to upskill, I think. Upskill and reskill, yes.
So upskilling, reskilling, there's a very interesting conversation. Talib, we cannot have any discussion about the future of work or, the people profession without AI, right? How do you see this impacting your business and the skills needed for locals, for your focus, which is localization, nationalization? Do you think there's going to be an increase in skill shortage? What challenges do you see coming up?
So in terms of digital skills, right? Again, we just like the Industrial Revolution, I think we need a digital revolution. There is a significant gap, and governments in the GCC, not in the UAE only, are playing catch up when it comes to addressing these gaps. What I'm seeing in the GCC is mostly proactive. It is a proactive measure rather than a reactive measure. So there isn't an immediate imminent threat of local talent, national talent losing and not being able to be fit for work because they don't understand AI or don't have the skills to adapt to artificial intelligence automation. It is there, but it isn't as significant as Dr. Vic has mentioned in far more developed countries, or I wouldn't even say developed. I think the Western world majority and in some countries in the Far East are embracing that wholeheartedly in a manner that it threatens jobs. I think what is happening in our region is while we're embracing the digital revolution, but layoffs because of automation is not as high and as obvious as you'd have in Western countries. It could be many reasons. I think one of the reasons could be the paternalistic nature of the environment, not only governments, but culture, businesses, multinational companies, and even multinational companies that come here and set up over here. You know, or it rubs off of them. The culture rubs off of them. So I think that is what happened. Now, so in terms of skill gap, there is a significant skill gap that needs to be addressed to be proactive, in order to be proactive. In terms of how it's impacting industries, automation is happening, it's impacting different industries. You have sectors like finance and banking and retail, where automation is very significant to the extent you go to a branch and almost everything is automated, right? And that's where you see it clearly. Retail as well, you see that also very clearly, fintech and so forth. So it does have an impact, and it has a slowly increasing impact on the markets, especially when you're looking at it today. The conversation is about local talent, national talent. It is something to worry about. We ran a focus group every time the young people, when we run focus groups, the young people who, the biggest question they ask, so what is the future with automation? What is, should I be worried after I graduate that I want to have a job, or I have to change my specialization or my discipline in university? This is the biggest fear that is there. So I think also another way it's impacting industry is the need for employers today are looking for people who can show soft skills and competency and aptitude that will enable them to adapt to a digital marketplace. So in the case the company embarks on a digital transformation drive and digitizes everything, they want to make sure that the people they hire have the literacy, the competencies, and the aptitude to adapt as well to this digital economy. So that is one thing we see that come up even in the selection process or in the assessment process. How it's impacting our business, we're still a learning process, honestly. We're still exploring. I am, I don't come from a recruitment background. I didn't work in a corporate recruitment company and then ventured. No, I jumped heads first and started a recruitment firm, and then that recruitment firm grew to become an advisory firm in national talent development, employment, and attraction. I guess because I don't come from the background, I've always been driven to how can we innovate in certain areas in a manner that can be impactful to our markets and to the problem we're trying to solve. And that is being able to create highly employable people and accelerate their employment in order that they hit the ground running. This has always been, so we've always looked at different ways of doing that. Today, we are looking and we are exploring artificial intelligence. We launched this year on platform Wiana Jobs. And Wiana Job is a talent search platform dedicated to nationalization. And we're toying with artificial intelligence. So we have Wiana, who so far just writes articles, which are cheeky and serious, right?
Yeah.
But the idea is, how can we also incorporate AI amongst other innovations that we have? How can we incorporate AI in order for us to solve this problem? The problem is, how can we help a minority workforce, who are the indigenous people, get motivated, excited, and skilled enough to enter the workforce fast? That is the problem that we're trying to solve.
Oh, wonderful. I'm so happy you mentioned the word motivation, because that's what I'm going to come to, Talib. You know, as you were walking in, you mentioned to us that you're going to be giving a motivation talk.
Yes.
To a group of 30 to 50 years old who need some motivation. And I was thinking, gosh, that's what I've been reading. And I would like to share with you this piece of research. And it's really like resonated when you mentioned this. I was thinking, why is there a lack of motivation? So according to this piece of research by Gallup report, a recent one, 2024, they mentioned two things. The title was "Why the World Cannot Quiet Quitting." So these are the people who are not motivated. They start just doing the bare minimum. And they highlighted that 80% of employees worldwide are quiet quitting. And this is set to continue unless organizations hire better managers.
Yes.
So quiet quitting is really the trend, is like, I'm not motivated. I'm going to do the minimum.
Yes.
I don't want to be involved or engaged. And then they kind of delved into the Middle East figures, and they two pieces here of information. 49% of employees in the Middle East stated that now is a good time to leave. So that was, it's like, why does everyone, number one, lack of motivation, quiet quitting, and they want to leave. And they said 15% of employees in the Middle East stated that they are engaged at work. So only 15% felt
1-5.
Yes, some kind of engagement.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, Talib, you know, from that, of course, this survey is a huge one, but if we focus on the UAE, and you're going to give that talk soon, right? What are the reasons for people quiet quitting, the lack of engagement?
Yeah.
What's going on?
I mean, the figures you shared are like mind-blowing. 80% globally, right? So it's a global problem.
Yes, absolutely.
I think there are many reasons in the UAE. I think one, let's also not forget, the biggest factor is in the Gulf region, youth are almost half of the population, 40% of the population. And with youth, when you're looking at youth, the approach and the motivation style is very different. I come from a generation that's between the younger generation and the elders, who I think the baby boomers were before me, right? And we are the generation where we required motivation, but at the same time, we had to learn how to self-motivate and get on with work.
Yes.
You know the term, get on with work, get on with business. But today, when you're looking at millennials and Gen Zs, it is not that. It is about, it's a skill to be learned. Self-motivation, mindset is a skill to be learned. And managers have to be able to not only inspire that within their subordinate or the younger teams they work with, but they have to live it as well.
Right.
So there's a lot of pressure on managers who might be demotivated themselves to now have to pull up their socks and also show a brave face that they're inspirational or they're inspiring. And they don't only talk the talk, but they walk the walk as well.
Right.
So in the Middle East, one factor is a younger population, right?
Yes.
And with a younger population, there's a lot of work needed and required when it comes to motivation, mindset, resilience, perseverance, grit. All of this are things that are not taught in schools. And households not all households teach it. So there is what needs to happen is something else. What needs to happen is more awareness from not only managers, but also parents about the importance of these type of competencies, right? So I think one is that. The second thing, in the Middle East, we can't deny, since we're speaking in an honest environment, right? We can't deny that in the Gulf region, one of the things I criticize organizations and especially multinational organizations who are supposed to come in with best practices is they don't adopt a lot of the best practices that they may adopt overseas. They don't bring that here. This environment is almost seen as a transient environment. We come here, we bring employees here to make money, increase our profitability, and the employee completes a number of years and they go and they move away, right? So things like motivation, a focus on motivation, are not top priority when it's put in the same conversation as of bottom line, reducing costs, increasing profit, being more competitive. And today, I think, and again, it's the nature of how things have been. But on a positive, or if I'm optimistic and hopeful, I think what we're seeing and we've been seeing especially in the last 5 years, is the governments have been shifting away from being a transient economy to be an economy of, we want to attract and retain people, top talent, people who are happy, people who can be here for the long term. So you see golden visas, you see different initiatives from different GCC countries. So we'll have to wait to see the fruits of that, you know. But if you want me to give you historical context, I can think of these two: youth population and also the nature of the market, which is transient mostly.
Those are very valid points. I just sort of caught my attention when you mentioned the generations. In 2017, the attention span of Gen Zs was about 12.8 seconds.
Wow. Yeah.
Today, it's between 5 seconds and 8 seconds. So the attention span for a particular generation that we're talking about here, who either are working in the workforce or would be working in the workforce, is so short. Therefore, if we approach motivation from the same angle that has been in practice since 1920s, Taylorism, Fordism, scientific management, that sort of thing, it may not work. Actually, it will not work because these are different generations. You and I grew up at a time when perhaps there was no internet. They get distracted today with so many things on the internet and devices. So when they come to the workplace, unlike other generations, that might come for 3 major reasons: to make money, to socialize, and to gain experience.
Yes.
Today, some people in the generation might think they are doing a favor to their parents by going to work. Some might think, well, it's just business as usual. You know, there is nothing extraordinary at the workplace for me. So managers as well as educationists like us, we have to approach things slightly differently to be able to make impact with the current generations.
Absolutely. And that is why I'm focused, coming back to the question, I find myself more focused on not the training aspect. I wouldn't position myself as a trainer, but more on the motivational and mentoring aspect, something that is more relatable to, or is whether it is one-to-one sessions that I sit with, whether it's young graduate all the way to executives, and you'd be surprised by the number of people who are in critical positions, in senior and leadership positions, who are demotivated and unhappy in their jobs, but have to get on with it, right? And it begs the question: how much of productivity loss is wasted there? So my focus is a lot on being relatable and more motivational. But as I mentioned to you, not just motivation to motivate people, but to actually give people actual practical takeaways that they can implement, for their careers and in their professional journey.
Right. That's very interesting, because it's quite worrying, isn't it? Like how most of the workforce is not motivated, and as you said, it's worldwide. It's not just an issue in certain parts of the world. And just to move on now further in the cycle of talent management to the retention piece, could you share with us some examples of, successful organizations who have managed to retain, let's say local talent? What are some of the best practices that maybe other companies can learn from and adapt? Because we again know that the young generation likes to move and hop from one job to the other. Is that something that you're finding as well? Like retention is an issue.
Without mentioning the name of organizations, what I can do is share some of the best practices I have seen, and some that I would like to see more. And we have conversations with companies. So with retention, there was a very interesting survey that was done on 500 companies a few years ago. And that survey found that 50% of the companies said the nationals they hired didn't complete 2 to 3 years tops in the organization, right? And I think one best practice today is for organizations to change mindset and approach nationalization in a more practical, pragmatic way. So if these nationals don't continue, or these young local talent, let's say in general, don't go beyond 3 years, the change in mindset is fine. What can we do that is what is the most fulfilling thing we can do for them during the 3 years? And how can we get the best out of them during the 3 years in a manner that it is a win even if they leave? So they become our brand ambassadors.
Right.
So I've seen organizations because I see a lot of training managers or L&D heads come to me and say, we're investing a lot of money, but we invest this money and they leave us. It should be worrying if you're investing that money and they leave you within a year. Let's be fair, right?
Yes.
Within a year and a half, maximum 2 years. But I think it's time to embrace the fact that said, people are not going to, it has nothing to do with you. It is nothing to do with your organization. It is to do with young people wanting to feel fulfilled and not seeing themselves stay in one job for 5, 6, 7 years. And that is the nature of it. So one best practice is I've seen organizations change mindsets from the top. It was from the CEOs, from the leadership, and they instilled it down to the HR practice and to line managers, where young people who leave earlier than what we would expect, no problem. Make sure that the employee experience is great to the degree they become brand ambassadors for your organization. So I've seen that. One particular organization is in the financial industry, and I remember they started this long ago. And while they invested in training and development, for them, it was always about, we're going to graduate the best of the top people in our industry. And whether they go to our competitors or they join the government sector, at the end of the day, they are our brand ambassadors. They are graduates. They look at them as graduates. And it worked so well for them that this organization established really strong relationships with the former employees who are now in decision-making positions, who became their clients. So that is one. Another best practice is organizations focus on health, work-life balance. So this reflects on their practices when it comes to flexible working. A lot of organizations, when they say flexible working, it's 1 hour difference. I mean, it doesn't make such a big or significant impact to the employee themselves. But you have organizations that allow flexible working, right? If you're an early morning person, you can come and show up at 6 a.m. and leave earlier or 7. And if you're not, you can come in around 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. and stay back later. So that flexibility is attractive. Also flexibility in terms of work from home. Now we've come out from the pandemic era. So we are spoiled for choices somehow. Meetings today, I don't have to meet someone in person, right?
Yeah.
I honestly, most of the time, I love to meet people in person. But a lot of the time I say, let's meet online. We don't have to meet in person and get stuck in traffic and all of that. So another thing is work from home. A lot of people are used to that. The whole system of working from home, where they can take care of family, be in close, avoid the traffic, enjoy work-life balance. And then now that the pandemic era is gone, I think a lot of people are struggling with having to show up at work every day full time, right? So one best practice is that. Another best practice is organizations driving their employees around a clear vision and a goal or strategy. So you have organizations that would announce and launch a program, a strategy or a theme for the next 3 to 5 years. And that theme could be a strategy of increasing profit or turnover by a certain degree, expanding into new markets. But what they would do as well is include their talent into this strategy, into this vision. So one of the things is, we want to grow our talent to become digitally savvy. We want to grow our talent in order to become, in order for us to groom them to become leaders in different environments. This whole idea or concept of young talent feeling a sense of belonging of the overall strategy or vision is very important for retention, because talent today wants to feel that they are part of something bigger than just the 9-to-5 job that they're part of. And that is why you find them after 9 to 5 dabbling into other things, maybe volunteering, a side business, a passion or hobby. They want to feel fulfilled. Organizations, some of the organizations are taking advantage of that by allowing these young talent to have a sense of fulfillment by being part of this broader strategy. Telling them, you want to train, you want to get into a training program, you can, we will support you in it. You want to get into volunteering, you want to start a business, we will support you. So I think these are some of the practices that I think that I find quite interesting.
Right. So that's Really,
And notice
really
I didn't mention
insightful, yeah.
anything about salaries.
Yes, I noticed that.
Although people talk about retention and salaries, right?
Yeah.
Because really, yes, salaries are important, but how much is good enough? Because I haven't found the magical number that would keep nationals in their jobs. There isn't. What is it? 20,000 dirham?
There isn't
30,000
anywhere
dirham?
in the world.
There isn't, right?
Maslow says salaries are not motivate. They don't motivate. Salaries don't motivate. There are bigger things, as you've mentioned.
Yes.
Self-actualization at the top.
Absolutely.
Working the way down. So.
Yes. Yeah.
That's great. So to really recap, it's about, sense of belonging. That was a big one. Flexibility, working from home. And I notice you always use the word fulfillment quite a lot, which is very powerful as well. We're getting a red card from the cameraman.
Yes.
I can't believe that's all, the time has gone so quickly, Talib, but it's been so insightful. I mean, there's lots we can talk about, but that's all we've got time for today's episode. So thank you very, very much for being with us today and for sharing this knowledge from your own experience and consultancy firm.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me and for a wonderful conversation. And red card or not, but I think and I believe we've managed to encapsulate a number of knowledge nuggets that would be useful for young people, employers, and hopefully a policymaker or two will be listening to this and also deriving benefit and value from a very important topic. So I thank you, and I commend you on what you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great.